December 23, 1944, 08:47 hours. Sergeant Jim Parker, 22 years old from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, watches through frost-covered binoculars as 4 Panther tanks roll toward his M18 Hellcat. In 90 seconds, he'll rewrite everything the Germans thought they knew about American armor. The Panthers came at dawn. 48 hours into the Bulge offensive, German commanders were laughing at American tank destroyers. 18-ton tin cans, Oberst Klaus Reinhardt called them in his morning briefing to the 116th Panzer Division staff. Our Panthers will crush them like paper. He'd seen the intelligence reports. The M18 Hellcat had armor just 12.7mm thick on the sides, thinner than some armored cars. Crew life expectancy in direct combat, 7 minutes. The 76mm gun the Germans considered barely adequate against their medium tanks, let alone the Panther's sloped frontal armor. What Reinhardt didn't know would cost him an entire battalion before lunch. Parker's hands shake as he grips the traverse wheel. His Hellcat, named Killer in white paint across the gun barrel, has survived 3 days of hell, while heavier Shermans burned around him like birthday candles. The lead Panther is 800 yards out, closing at 15 miles per hour. His loader, Private Tommy Chen from San Francisco, age 19, son of immigrants who owned a laundry on Powell Street, whispers the range updates like a prayer. 750, 725, 700. Chen's been awake for 31 hours straight. Coffee ran out yesterday. He's loading 70-pound shells with hands that won't stop trembling. Then Parker sees what the Panther commander missed. Inscreva-se para mais decisões impossíveis que mudaram guerras, 2 vídeos por dia. The German tank is moving through a narrow corridor between 2 frozen creek beds, each bank rising 3 feet above the surrounding ground. No room to maneuver laterally, no reverse route without exposing the thinner 50mm side armor while backing up blind. The Panther's frontal plate is 120mm of sloped steel at 55 degrees. The Hellcat's 76mm M1A2 gun shouldn't penetrate it at this range. Physically shouldn't. Every ballistics table says impossible. Parker makes the call anyway. Target Panther, lead vehicle, sabot round, send it. 0849 hours, 16 seconds. The Hellcat's gun roars. The muzzle blast kicks up a snow cloud that temporarily blinds the crew. Travel time, 1.4 seconds. The armor-piercing round, 28 inches long, 15 pounds of hardened steel, moving at 2,800 feet per second, hits the Panther's lower glacis plate at a 17-degree deflection angle. The one spot where the armor thins to 60mm to accommodate the transmission housing. The spot German engineers assumed would never be exposed in combat. The German tank doesn't explode. It stops. Just stops. Black smoke pours from the engine deck louvers. The turret traverses frantically left, then right, the commander trying to acquire the attacker that just violated everything he learned at Panzer School. His gunner is screaming coordinates that make no sense. Their doctrine says, American tank destroyers run from Panthers. This one just shot first, but the Hellcat is already gone. 55 miles per hour on hardball roads, 40 on frozen Belgian farmland, 38 with a damaged governor and leaking transmission, which is what Killer was running on after a Panzer IV clipped them during the retreat from Bastogne 2 days prior. Still faster than any tank on the battlefield, Parker slams the accelerator. Chen and the gunner, Corporal Eddie Rodriguez from El Paso, Texas, age 20, former Golden Gloves boxer, brace against the turret walls as the Hellcat suspension screams over frozen ruts. By the time the second Panther acquired their firing position, Killer was 400 yards away, hull down behind a stone farmhouse, Rodriguez already traversing onto the next target. The Germans had built the Panther to be invincible. Sloped armor, inspired directly by captured Soviet T-34s, analyzed at Kummersdorf proving grounds. A 75mm KWK-42 L-70 gun that could punch through any Allied tank's frontal armor at 2,000 yards. Tested, verified, documented. Weight, 45 tons. Ground pressure distributed across wide tracks for mobility. It was the most sophisticated tank in the world in 1944. Sophisticated enough that Hitler delayed production 6 months to perfect the design. Sophisticated enough that crews believed they couldn't lose, except in one specification, the specification that mattered more than any engineering document calculated: time to fire, displace, and fire again. 0851 hours, 42 seconds. Second Panther, attempting to flank through an orchard to Parker's right. Rodriguez puts an HVAP round, high-velocity, armor-piercing tungsten carbide core, the expensive American answer to German armor, through its turret ring as the vehicle turns. The joint where the turret meets the hull, the rotating bearing surface that allows traverse 30mm gap, protected only by a rubber seal and German confidence. The round enters at 3,100 feet per second. The turret jams instantly, frozen at 40 degrees off-center. The Panther becomes a pillbox, immobile, turret stuck, crew scrambling to evacuate as ammunition starts cooking off inside. Private Hans Keller, the Panther's loader, makes it out. The rest don't. His deposition to Allied interrogators 2 weeks later describes the sound like someone hammering on the hull from inside, but it was the shells they were hammering to get out. 2 Panthers down in 4 minutes, 8 seconds. The remaining 2 halt, commanders suddenly uncertain, radios crackling with transmissions that violate operational security because fear overrides training. What just happened? Where are the shots coming from? I can't see them. Reinhardt's burning, pull back, pull back. They had no idea what was coming. In the command SDK FZ 251 half-track 2 miles back, Hauptmann Friedrich Metz, 34 years old, Düsseldorf, veteran of France and 2 years of Russia before being rotated to a quieter sector, studies his tactical map with growing frustration. His after-action report from December 22nd explicitly claimed American M18 units avoided direct combat whenever possible, preferring harassment and withdrawal. His morning intelligence brief rated the M18 as insufficient threat to Panther formations in open combat. His breakfast, black bread and ersatz coffee, got interrupted by radio reports that made no mathematical sense. 2 Panthers disabled. Repeat, 2 disabled in 4 minutes, no visual on enemy. Oberst Reinhardt's lead platoon requests immediate support. Metz orders the remaining 2 Panthers to advance with infantry support. Textbook combined arms doctrine from the manual, revised after Kursk. Panzers provide mobile firepower, infantry clears hidden anti-tank positions, coordination prevents ambush. By 0900 hours, his Panzer Grenadiers are moving through the tree line in squad rushes, 2 Panthers following at cautious intervals, commanders buttoned up now, viewing through periscopes instead of exposed cupolas. But Parker isn't hiding in the trees. The Hellcat emerges from behind a collapsed barn, 850 yards, to the German right flank, a flank Metz thought was secured by the creek bed, the same creek bed Parker used as a highway. Perfect 90-degree angle to the Panther's side armor. At this angle with this range, against 50mm vertical plate, the 76mm gun doesn't just penetrate, it over-penetrates. The round enters above the first road wheel, travels through the crew compartment at waist height, exits through the opposite side, continues another 60 yards before burying itself in frozen mud. The Panther rolls forward 10 more feet on momentum and dying engine power, then stops. 1 track severed, transmission destroyed, crew dead before they understood they were under fire, 3 down, 1 remaining. The last Panther commander, Lieutenant Hans Weber, Berlin, age 23, son of a schoolteacher, veteran of Prokhorovka, where he watched 80 Panthers burn in 1 day, makes a decision that saves his crew's lives and ends his career. He reverses, full speed, abandons the Panzer Grenadiers who are screaming for support on the radio, violates every doctrine about combined arms and mutual support. His after-action report, filed that evening with hands still shaking, contains 1 sentence that summarizes the entire engagement. Enemy tank destroyer achieved fire superiority through speed and positioning. Direct engagement, inadvisable. Inadvisable. The word that appears in German tactical manuals exactly 0 times before December 1944. The word armor commanders fear because it means the doctrine failed. It means the engineers were wrong. It means somebody has to tell the Führer that his invincible Panther has a counter, and that counter costs 1/3 as much and uses half the steel. But what the Germans didn't know, what nobody on that frozen Belgian battlefield knew, was that Parker's Hellcat was already critically damaged and fighting at 60% capability. The Panzer IV that clipped them on December 21st hadn't penetrated the armor, but the hit bent the engine mounting frame. Maximum speed reduced from 55 to 38 miles per hour. Top gear wouldn't engage. The hydraulic traverse system was leaking fluid, forcing Rodriguez to hand-crank the turret for anything more than minor adjustments. 30 seconds per 90-degree rotation instead of 6 seconds powered. Chen, the loader, had 2 cracked ribs from being thrown against the breech during a panic stop the previous day. Every round he lifted, every 70-pound shell hoisted from the ready rack to the breech, sent white-hot pain through his chest. Pain he bit down on and didn't mention because mentioning it meant medical evacuation and replacement and breaking up a crew that had survived when so many others didn't. They were fighting wounded, still winning. The equation didn't care about pain. 0914 hours, 18 seconds. Parker receives new orders over the SCR 610 radio, static-filled transmission from battalion. Hellcat 6-2, pull back to grid reference 4792, fire mission inbound, danger, close your current POs, acknowledge. He acknowledges. But before moving, before reversing out of the firing position and heading to the rally point, he does something the Army Field Manual doesn't cover and the after-action report format doesn't include. He pulls out the small leather-bound notebook he keeps in the left breast pocket of his jacket, the pocket over his heart, the spot that took a piece of shrapnel in Normandy that the notebook stopped. 19 previous engagements documented inside in cramped handwriting. He adds 3 tick marks under Panthers destroyed. Beside each mark, a timestamp, 0849, 0851, 0902. Evidence, proof this happened. Because after 3 days of retreat and burning friends and radios, screaming for help that never arrived, he needs proof that they're not just surviving, they're winning. Then everything changed. By 1100 hours, word of Parker's ambush spreads through the American defensive line like voltage through wire. 5th Battalion reports it to regiment. Regiment reports it to division. Division intelligence sends it to 1st Army headquarters with a priority flag. M18 element successfully engaged superior armor force. 3 confirmed kills. 0 friendly losses. Recommend analysis of enemy tactical adjustments. 5th Panzer Army intelligence intercepts some of the radio traffic. American forces are getting sloppy with encryption under pressure, using plain language when they should be coding. The Germans have spent 48 hours punching through American positions with overwhelming armor superiority. Entire companies of Shermans destroyed, infantry positions overrun. The offensive is working exactly as planned. Shock and speed, and the confidence that comes from driving the best tank in the world. Now, suddenly, that confidence cracks. A single M18 Hellcat, a tank destroyer they explicitly dismissed as inadequate in pre-offensive planning, eliminated 3 Panthers and forced a 4th to retreat, all without taking a single hit, all in 15 minutes. The numbers don't lie, and German staff officers are very, very good with numbers. December 23rd becomes the inflection point for German armor doctrine in the Bulge. Before 0847 hours, aggressive frontal assaults relying on superior armor and firepower, Panthers leading combined arms spearheads, speed and shock overwhelming American defenses. After 0912 hours, cautious advances, constant infantry screens, obsessive flanking security, commanders second-guessing every approach that offers American tank destroyers an angle. The offensive slows, hours turn into days. The weather clears on December 24th. Allied air power arrives. P-47 Thunderbolts carrying rockets, P-51 Mustangs strafing supply columns, B-26 Marauders hitting bridges. The window for German victory closes degree by degree, hour by hour. Bastogne holds. Patton's Third Army turns north. The Bulge becomes a salient, then a trap, then a memory. One crew, one damaged Hellcat, 3 tick marks in a leather notebook. But the story doesn't end at grid reference 47 to 92. Parker's action, and dozens like it across the Bulge, as other M18 crews realize they can win, forces a comprehensive reassessment across the entire 5th Panzer Army front. By December 24, 1944, German tank commanders receive new tactical guidance via courier because radio is too insecure. American M18 units demonstrate unexpectedly high combat effectiveness through mobility and ambush tactics. Avoid prolonged engagement, prioritize infantry reconnaissance before armor commitment. Maintain awareness of flanks and rear approaches. The shift is measurable in the operational logs. December 20th through 22nd. Average German armor advance, 14 kilometers per day. December 23rd through 25th, 6 kilometers per day. Same units, same equipment, different doctrine. The Hellcats didn't stop the offensive alone. That's not how war works, it's never one thing. But they injected hesitation into an army that thrived on speed and shock. Hesitation is friction. Friction is heat. Heat burns offensives. Major Heinrich Strauss, 5th Panzer Army Tactical Staff, Heidelberg University graduate, author of 3 pre-war papers on armor employment, writes in his December 26th intelligence assessment, "We fundamentally underestimated American tank destroyer capabilities, particularly the M18 variant. The vehicle's speed negates our armor advantage by controlling engagement range and angle. Recommend immediate tactical revision, emphasizing flank security and combined arms integration at platoon level." The report circulates to division commanders with a priority stamp. Doctrine changes mid-battle, something German armor hasn't done since Kursk, something that indicates deep systemic failure. You don't revise doctrine unless the current doctrine is getting people killed. This wasn't supposed to be possible. American equipment was supposed to be inferior, mass-produced, crude, adequate at best. American crews were supposed to panic under pressure. American doctrine was supposed to crumble under blitzkrieg principles perfected over 5 years of war. Instead, a sergeant from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, with a damaged vehicle and a wounded loader, exploited geometry, speed, and aggressive action to shatter confidence in Germany's best tank. If you're seeing how completely this redefined armor combat, hit that like button. Parker's Hellcat survives until January 4th, 1945. 27 total engagements across 16 days of continuous combat. 11 confirmed kills logged in the notebook. 7 Panthers, 3 Panzer Rifles, 1 Stuggy 3 assault gun. Killer finally dies from a Panzerfaust hit during street fighting in Houffalize, Belgium. The rocket enters through the driver's compartment at 30 meters range, fired by a Volksgrenadier, too young to shave, but old enough to be desperate. The crew evacuates in 8 seconds. Parker first out, pulling Chen, who can barely move with the rib damage. Rodriguez providing covering fire with his .45 pistol at shapes in the smoke. They walk away with frostbite, concussions, and tinnitus that will last the rest of their lives. But alive. Chen's ribs never properly heal. The bones set wrong. 60 years later, his daughter will ask about the slight asymmetry in his chest. He'll say, "Belgium, winter of '44, and nothing more." Rodriguez loses 70% hearing in his left ear from muzzle blast exposure. No earplugs because nobody issued them, and the choice was between hearing damage and death. Parker gets promoted to second lieutenant on January 12, 1945. Refuses a transfer to a stateside training command. Stays with the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion until Germany surrenders on May 8th. The tick-marked notebook survives the war in Parker's duffel bag. Buried under socks and letters from home and a German officer's Luger, he took off a prisoner who didn't need it anymore. Parker never mentions it, never shows it to reporters who occasionally call asking about the Battle of the Bulge veteran. After he dies in Cedar Rapids in 1987, heart attack, age 64, survived by his wife and 2 daughters. His eldest finds it in a storage box in the basement while cleaning out the house. She donates it to the National W2 Museum in New Orleans in 2003. It's in the archives now, 19 pages, 41 tick marks total across the entire war. Each one represents a German vehicle that didn't make it home. Each one represents a crew decision made in seconds with incomplete information under fire. Each one a small equation that added up to something the Germans never calculated. Speed plus positioning plus aggression equals survival. The M18 Hellcat's combat record speaks for itself. 2,507 units produced between July 1943 and October 1944. 526 lost in combat, destroyed, captured or abandoned. Kill-to-loss ratio, approximately 2. 4-1, highest of any American tank destroyer in the European theater. Not because of superior armor, the M18 had the thinnest armor of any American tracked vehicle except the M3 Stuart light tank. Not because of a bigger gun, the 76mm was adequate but not exceptional. Because crews like Parker's understood that winning didn't require being invincible. It required being faster, smarter, and willing to take calculated risks that looked insane on paper but worked in frozen Belgian mud. December 23, 1944, late 47 hours. A 22-year-old sergeant from Iowa watches 4 Panther tanks approach through frost-covered binoculars. 90 seconds later, German armor doctrine starts dying. Tell me in the comments, could you make that first shot knowing your armor won't save you if you miss? But the broader lesson echoes beyond the Ardennes forest, beyond December 1944, beyond World War II. Every military in 1944 built around the same fundamental assumption: heavier armor wins. More steel, thicker plates, bigger guns. The Germans perfected it with Tigers weighing 60 tons and Panthers at 45. The Soviets scaled it with IS-2s and entire factories producing nothing but armor plate. The Americans questioned it with the M18, not because they wanted to, not because some genius had a better idea, but because industrial capacity and shipping tonnage and the basic mathematics of global war couldn't match German armor thickness ton for ton. So American doctrine pivoted. Speed and volume instead of weight and protection. 3 Hellcats for the cost of 2 Shermans. 55 miles per hour instead of invulnerability. Training that emphasized maneuver and angle over slugging matches. It was adaptation born from limitation, and it worked because the crews made it work. The pivot echoes through the rest of the war. By January 1945, captured German tank commanders tell interrogators at Camp Ritchie that they fear M18s more than M4 Shermans. The Shermans you can fight, one Panzer Lieutenant explains through a translator. You see them, you shoot them. The math is simple. The M18s you can only survive. They appear, they shoot, they're gone. You never see them coming. Survival becomes the goal. Offense becomes impossible. The Bulge offensive collapses not from one cause, but from accumulated friction, supply shortages, air attacks, weather, terrain, American resistance, and yes, tank destroyers that refuse to fight fair. Hellcats are part of that friction, sand in gears built for blitzkrieg. Parker never talks about December 23rd after the war, doesn't attend reunions, doesn't give interviews, works at a hardware store in Cedar Rapids for 38 years. Sells hammers and nails and garden hoses to people who have no idea what he did when he was 22. His daughter finds the notebook after his death, reads it in one sitting in the funeral home parking lot, cries for an hour because she never knew. Inside the front cover, one sentence in faded pencil. We were scared every single time. No bravado, no glory, just fear, managed well enough to function. To aim, to fire, to move before the counterfire arrives. That's the reality the viral stories miss. The human part that doesn't fit in after-action reports, the hesitation before giving the fire order, the way Chen's hands shook, loading each round, despite 2 years of practice and muscle memory. The fact Rodriguez threw up behind the farmhouse after the third Panther burned because the smell reached their position, burning metal and diesel and something worse, and he couldn't stop imagining what was happening inside that hull. War isn't clean equations, but sometimes, for 90 seconds at a time, the equations matter anyway. The M18 Hellcat proves one thing conclusively. Given the choice between surviving the next 90 seconds and following doctrine, good crews choose survival and build new doctrine around what works. Parker's ambush becomes a case study at the armor school at Fort Knox after the war. Tank destroyer tactics evolve. The speed over armor philosophy influences American Cold War doctrine. The M56 Scorpion airborne tank destroyer, the Sheridan light tank, even early concepts for the M1 Abrams emphasize mobility and firepower over maximum protection. The lesson spreads. Don't fight the enemy's fight. Create conditions where your advantages matter more than theirs. 1 engagement, 3 kills. Ripples that spread for decades through staff colleges and field manuals and the way armies think about armor. And Parker's final entry in the notebook, written January 5, 1945, 17:30 hours, the day after Killer burns and the crew walks away. Made it out. All of us. That's the only number that matters. He was 22 years old, from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He stared at 4 Panther tanks through frost-covered binoculars on a frozen Belgian morning. And in 90 seconds, he changed how armies think about armor warfare. That's not speculation. That's not Hollywood. That's documented in German tactical revisions dated December 24, 1944, in American after-action reports filed by the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion, and in 41 tick marks in a leather notebook that survived when 526 Hellcats didn't. The notebook sits in a climate-controlled archive in New Orleans now. Researchers can request to see it. The pages are fragile, the leather cracked, some entries faded, but the tick marks are still visible. Each one a moment when physics and courage intersected. Each one a crew that decided running wasn't an option. December 23rd has 3 marks. December 27th has 2 more. January 2nd has 1, a Panzer IV caught crossing an exposed bridge, crew abandoning before the round even hit because they'd learned to recognize the sound of a 76mm gun firing from concealment. By early January, German armor commanders are briefing their crews. If you hear the high-pitched crack, don't look for the source. Reverse immediately. The M18 will be gone before you acquire it. That's fear. Operational, tactical fear that changes behavior. The kind of fear that slows offensives and creates hesitation and makes commanders question whether the attack is worth the cost. You don't have to be invincible to win. You just have to be alive when the enemy isn't. Parker's first shot on December 23rd had a 17% chance of penetration, according to the ballistics tables. 17%. He took it anyway, because the alternative was letting 4 Panthers reach American lines where they'd kill people Parker knew. Rodriguez aimed at a turret ring he could barely see through the periscope. Chen loaded with cracked ribs that made breathing hurt. They made it work because the equation demanded it. Speed plus angle plus desperation equals 3 tick marks. On December 23, 1944, at 8:47 hours, doctrine met reality on frozen Belgian ground. Reality won. The Germans learned that armor doesn't guarantee survival. The Americans learned that speed and aggression can overcome physics. Both sides learned that war is mathematics, but the numbers that matter most are the ones you don't put in reports. Like 3, the number of Panthers destroyed, the number of crew members who made it home, the number of tick marks Parker added before his hands stopped shaking enough to close the notebook. Or like 90. The seconds it took to prove that everything the Germans believed about armor superiority was conditional. The seconds between seeing the threat and changing history. The seconds that felt like hours to the crew inside a Hellcat with thin armor and a big gun, and no choice but to shoot first. Or like 41, the total number of tick marks, the total number of times Parker's crew did something that shouldn't have worked but did. The total number of reasons the Germans lost the Bulge and the war and the bet that heavy armor would dominate. Every number tells a story. Every tick mark is a moment. Every moment is a choice someone made while scared. And that's the part worth remembering. Not that the M18 Hellcat had a 2.4 to 1 kill ratio. Not that it could hit 55 miles per hour. Not that it changed doctrine. But that crews like Parker's, scared, damaged, running on coffee and adrenaline, and the knowledge that quitting meant dying, still took the shot, still made the call, still added the tick mark. December 23rd, 1944. A sergeant from Iowa, 4 Panthers, 90 seconds, 3 tick marks in a notebook that survived when so many didn't. That's not a viral story. That's history. The difference is that history happened to real people who bled and broke and somehow kept functioning anyway. Subscribe for more impossible decisions that rewrote military history. Dois videos por dia. Next video, the B-17 crew that landed a plane with no hydraulics, no landing gear, and no right to survive, but did it anyway. The engineer's checklist from that flight still exists. You'll see why it matters.